The old pickup truck coughed one last tired breath as it rolled into the luxury car dealership, its faded blue paint dull under the sharp white lights, its engine ticking like a weary heart that had carried too much for too long. People turned, some stared, some smirked, and one powerful CEO, standing near a glass wall lined with million-dollar cars, laughed quietly as he judged the man who stepped out of that truck. A single father with tired eyes, worn boots, and a past no one in that room could see. In that moment, no one imagined that within the hour, pride would crumble, assumption would burn, and silence would fall when cash met the desk for a roll. Royce no one believed he could afford. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us never to judge a soul by appearance. Take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories that stay with you long after they end. The man's name was Daniel Harper, though almost no one in that dealership cared to know it. To them, he was just another outsider who didn't belong among marble floors, polished chrome, and quiet confidence. Daniel paused beside his truck before closing the door, resting his hand on the cracked metal as if thanking it. That truck had been his lifeline for nearly a decade. It had carried his daughter to school, hauled lumber for late-night jobs, and served as shelter on nights when grief weighed too heavily to sleep. Its rusted edges told stories of survival, not failure, but the room saw only decay. Daniel adjusted his jacket, one that had once been sharp but now showed its years, and walked inside. Each step echoed louder than it should have, and with every echo came memories he tried to keep buried. He remembered walking into hospitals with the same heavy feeling, the smell of disinfectant replacing hope, his wife's hand growing colder as life slipped away. He remembered the promise he made at her bedside that he would raise their daughter with strength, dignity, and honesty, no matter how hard the world became. That promise had cost him comfort, sleep, and pride, but he had kept it. The dealership was quiet in that expensive way, where even silence felt curated. Salespeople in tailored suits glanced at Daniel, some with curiosity, others with immediate dismissal. A few whispered, assuming he couldn't hear them. Daniel felt it, that familiar tightening in his chest, the one that came whenever he entered spaces not built for men like him. But he kept walking, because walking away had never been an option for him. Not when his daughter's future was always on the line. Across the room stood Victor Langford, a CEO known for sharp deals and sharper judgments. His name carried weight in business circles, and his presence demanded attention. Was finalizing paperwork for a new executive fleet purchase, surrounded by staff eager to please him. When his eyes landed on Daniel, they lingered just long enough for a smirk to form. Victor's gaze slid from the old boots to the tired jacket, then back toward the dusty truck, visible through the glass. His amusement was quiet, but contagious, spreading to those around him. Daniel approached the reception desk, asking calmly about a specific model, his voice steady despite the tension pressing on him. The receptionist hesitated, glancing toward the sales floor, unsure whether to take him seriously. Daniel noticed, of course. He always noticed. Years of being overlooked had sharpened his awareness more than any education ever could. Still, he waited patiently, hands folded, eyes focused, breathing slow. While waiting, his mind drifted back to the nights he worked, double shifts, construction by day and logistics consulting by night, sending his daughter to sleep with stories instead of excuses. He remembered teaching her that true wealth wasn't money but integrity. That silence in the face of mockery was sometimes louder than shouting. Those lessons had shaped him, hardened him, but they had also softened his heart in ways most people never understood. Eventually, a junior salesperson approached him, polite but distant, offering assistance with the careful tone reserved for those assumed to be browsing, not buying. Daniel explained what he was looking for, his words precise, his knowledge unexpectedly deep. The salesperson blinked, surprised, and nodded, leading him toward the back of the showroom where the most exclusive vehicles were displayed. As they walked, Daniel could feel eyes following him, curiosity mixing with skepticism. Victor noticed too. He watched as Daniel moved closer to the center of attention, and something about it irritated him. The idea that someone like that could step into his world unsettled him. He leaned toward a colleague, making a comment that drew a few suppressed laughs. Daniel didn't hear the words, but he felt their weight. He felt the same weight he had felt standing alone at his wife's funeral, people whispering about how he would manage. How long before he failed? The Rolls-Royce sat like a sculpture under soft lights, its presence commanding respect. Daniel stopped in front of it, his expression changing, not with greed, but with something closer to reverence. This wasn't about luxury for him. It was about closure, about marking the end of a chapter written in sacrifice, and the beginning of one he had earned quietly, painfully, and honestly. He ran his fingers just above the surface, not touching, as if acknowledging the distance he had traveled to. Stand there, the salesperson explained features, pricing, and availability, clearly more attentive now. Daniel listened carefully, nodding, asking thoughtful questions. His calm unsettled the assumptions forming around him. Victor's amusement faded slightly, replaced confusion. The man from the truck, once behaving the way he expected. There was no awe, no desperation, no insecurity, just quiet confidence. Daniel, as thoughts wandered again, this time to the turning point year earlier, when a small consulting job turned into a breakthrough. He had helped a struggling logistics firm optimize their routes, saving them millions. He had taken no credit, no spotlight, only fair compensation. Word spread slowly, then suddenly. Contracts followed. He reinvested every cent, building a firm that valued people over profit, systems over ego. He never upgraded his truck because he did. Need to. He needed stability, not symbols. As paperwork began, Victor, as impatience grew, he interrupted, questioning the seriousness of the transaction, his tone laced with disbelief. The room shifted, conversations paused. Daniel looked up, meeting Victor's gaze for the first time. There was no anger in his eyes, only clarity, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are, regardless of who doubts you. Daniel calmly requested the final amount, including taxes and customization. The number echoed in the air, heavy and undeniable. The salesperson hesitated, glancing toward Victor, then back at Daniel. Without a word, Daniel reached into his worn jacket and produced a simple envelope. Inside were documents, proof of funds, and authorization letters that told a story far louder than any explanation could. The room went silent. Victor's expression changed, slow, why at first, then completely. Confidence drained from his posture as realization set in. The man he had dismissed, mocked, and underestimated wasn't pretending. He wasn't compensating. He was simply living a life invisible to those who judged too quickly. Daniel completed the transaction with calm efficiency, choosing to pay in full, in cash equivalents, leaving no room for doubt. The sound of the receipt printing felt like thunder in the quiet showroom. Staff members who had ignored him now stood straighter, eyes wide, respect dawning too late. Victor looked away, his earlier laughter now a bitter memory he couldn't erase. At Daniel prepared to leave, he glanced once more at his old truck through the glass. He felt gratitude, not embarrassment. That truck had been there when no one else was. It had carried his pain, his hope, and his determination. He knew he would keep it, not out of necessity, but out of respect for the road it had traveled with him. Before walking out, Daniel paused, not to gloat, but to breathe. He thought of his daughter, waiting at home, unaware that today marked more than a purchase. It marked proof that resilience, when paired with humility, could outshine arrogance every time. He imagined telling her later, not about the car, but about the lesson, about how silence and patience had spoken louder than any comeback ever could. If this story is starting to stir something inside you, if it's reminding you of moments when you were judged, overlooked, or underestimated, stay with it. Because the most powerful part isn't the car, or the money, or the shock on a CEO's face. It's what comes after. Daniel drove away later that day, not in the Rolls-Royce yet, but in his old truck, the seat worn, the engine familiar. He felt lighter, not because of wealth, but because a chapter had finally closed. He had proven nothing to anyone else, only to himself. The city lights blurred past as he headed home, where a small apartment held laughter, homework on the table, and a daughter who believed her father could do anything. Weeks later, When he finally picked up the Rolls-Royce, he did so quietly. No announcement. No celebration. Just a nod to the staff who now treated him differently. He donated the truck to a shelter that helped single parents rebuild their lives, knowing exactly how much one reliable vehicle could change a future. He watched as another tired father sat behind the wheel, eyes filling with tears, hope reigniting. Victor, on the other hand, carried that day with him like a scar, not because of the money, but because his certainty had been shattered. He had learned, too late, that power without humility was fragile, and success without empathy was hollow. The image of that old truck haunted him, a reminder that greatness often arrives quietly, wearing clothes that don't impress. Near the end of that year, Daniel's company funded scholarships, rebuilt homes, and mentored young entrepreneurs who reminded him of himself. He never told his story publicly. He didn't need applause. The lives changed were enough. Every night, he tucked his daughter in and reminded her that who you are matters far more than what you show. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on your own journey or the way you see others, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. And before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Please comment below and tell us about a time you were underestimated, or a moment when kindness proved someone wrong. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today, because in the end, this wasn't a story about a Rolls-Royce or a mocked truck. It was a story about dignity, perseverance, and the quiet power of never letting the word decide your worth. And sometimes the most powerful victories are the ones achieved without saying a single word.